I still remember vividly when I was 7 years old. I grew up in a hockey family. I fell in love with hockey when I was 3 years old. And when I was 7, my favorite player was Joe Sakic. I idolized him as much as anybody in the world, as much as I did my mom, my dad, my grandpa, my grandma. And at the 2002 Men's Olympic Winter Games, Canada hadn't won a gold medal in 50 years. And I can still remember being a 7-year-old kid in February of 2002, watching that gold medal game, watching Joe Sakic score the game-winning goal to win Canada's first gold medal in 50 years. And for me, that was the moment when I knew that someday I wanted to play for Team Canada. Someday I wanted to win a gold medal for Canada. And so I committed everything that I had to that for the rest of my childhood and to my life to this point. And as I progressed as a hockey player, I started to play AAA hockey and moved into my minor midget year when I was 15, 16 years old. And was entering my OHL draft year, which was an exciting time to hopefully take a step forward and get drafted to the NHL and play in the NHL someday, maybe have an opportunity to play in the World Juniors, go to the Olympics someday, play for Team Canada. And so in September of 2009, I was 15 years old at the time, we had our first game of the season in a tournament in Toronto, and I was having some serious pain in my lower left leg. Kind of just figured it was from overtraining, but ended up breaking my leg in the second period of that game. My season was essentially done. I had a 4-month recovery process ahead of me. I had a titanium rod inserted into my left leg the very next week and started the recovery process, hoping to have a small chance of being back late in the season to hopefully get drafted. But I was devastated. I was 15. My primary focus in life was playing hockey, and that was somewhat taken away from me. And throughout that recovery process, though, I started walking within 3 weeks, started skating within 4 to 6, got in maybe the best shape of my life to that point, ready to come back, ready to make a big impact and get drafted later that year. But throughout that process, I started to develop initially a small bump just below my left knee. And over time, it continued to grow, and really had no idea. I'm not a medical professional, so I had no idea. But finally, when I went in for my last x-ray, about 3.5, 4 months after the initial break of my tib fib, the bump had grown to about the size of a tennis ball, to be completely honest. And at this time, I was still skating, still training, practicing with my team without contact, in very good shape, feeling healthy, mentally well, just excited to play hockey again, excited to play a first-round playoff series against Windsor. But my x-ray showed about 2 inches of my bone was missing. And so within 24 hours, I was admitted into the hospital, I had a biopsy, and I was diagnosed with spindle cell sarcoma, a form of bone cancer, just like that. And at 15 years old, I will say there was a benefit to being so young and so naive and having very little knowledge about chemotherapy, about cancer, about everything that entails. And so I just thought, okay, that's fine. I'll do the 8-month chemotherapy protocol. I'll be healthy in 8 months. I can still play hockey. I was devastated that I'd missed the OHL draft, but I knew that I was going to live. And the scariest part for me happened a week later when I met with the surgeon from Mount Sinai Hospital. He came to the Children's Hospital in London where I was being treated. He walked into the room, introduced himself to myself and my family, and said, "Tyler, in order to save your life, we have to amputate your leg." And it just felt like everything in my life exploded at that moment. And I can say now, over 8 years later, that it was by far much more difficult to hear that I was going to lose my leg than it was to hear the possibility that I might die. As crazy as that sounds, but I was 15 years old, and all I wanted to do, all I'd poured my entire life into, was being a hockey player. And so I went through an 8-month chemotherapy protocol, had my amputation on the day of my OHL draft, and started the recovery process. I finished chemotherapy in October 2010. First thing I did was try on my hockey equipment. I wanted to play again. I started skating. Thought for a few months that I'd be the first above-knee amputee to play in the NHL, and quickly learned how difficult it is to skate without a knee and with a prosthetic leg. And so for me, sledge hockey offered me an opportunity to live my dream, a second chance that not many people get. And so I started sledge hockey in 2011, learned a sport that I already knew how to play, but had to learn to play it in a completely different way, biomechanically completely different, a sport that's played with just your upper body. And fortunately, after I learned that new skill set, I was able to, just through intentional hard work, I was able to make Team Canada in 2012-13 and meet so many like-minded individuals that had, some who had served in the military, some who were born with a disability, and such as spina bifida or sacral agenesis, and were in a wheelchair, and others who also had cancer and lost their legs, some who were born without legs. So I met some of my favorite people in the entire world who, despite their circumstances, just wanted to do what they love and do it to the best of their ability. And I think for me, outside of competing, outside of going to 2 Paralympics, winning 2 World Championships, by far the best thing that I've been able to do is travel to different communities across Canada and meet young kids from all walks of life, whether they're facing financial barriers, physical barriers, cognitive barriers, and being able to meet them and see their passion for sport and see them be able to use that as something to propel them forward and something to make their day better. And one thing comes to mind all the time is last year I had the opportunity to go to Yellowknife to visit a young boy named Riley, who is one of my favorite people on earth. He has spina bifida, and he's our team's biggest fan. And so I had a chance to go out with Jumpstart last year and just spend 3 days with him and his family. And by far the most infectious personality that I've ever been around. And despite the challenges that he's faced, not just geographically or not just physically growing up with spina bifida, but he lives in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, and faces geographical barriers that I couldn't imagine. I grew up in Forest, Ontario, and was given some incredible opportunities. And I went out there, and him and his family created a sledge hockey team of 15 people in the Northwest Territories. And I was just blown away at their passion for community. And I came home from that trip with feeling so grateful for every opportunity that I've been given to represent Canada, to grow up in a town that has supported me tremendously, and to have regained my health now and be healthier than I've ever been in my entire life. And so through hockey, I've been able to win a couple world championships. Both of them happened to be in South Korea. Go to 2 Paralympic Games, one in Sochi, Russia, where we won bronze, and most recently in South Korea when we finished with silver. And I would say that experience in Korea, and as crazy as it sounds, was probably even more so of the most traumatic experience of my life, even though it's just a hockey game. But here's the thing: we were up 1-0 with A minute and 2 seconds left. I took the face off in our own zone, won it, cleared it off the glass. We had a breakaway, hit a post on an empty net. The U.S. came down, tied the game with 37 seconds to go. I stayed on the ice, skated around. I completely blacked out. I was just so caught off guard at what just happened. We were 37 seconds away from everything that I'd dreamed of for the past 21 years. And then we had to play overtime. And 2.5 minutes into overtime, they scored. And I say it was the most traumatic experience, not just the game itself, but for most of the last 9 to 10 months, I lost control over my thoughts and my emotions, and just I allowed hockey to define my life, and I allowed it to control everything about my life. And I started to question, whether or not I was worthy of ever becoming a gold medalist or representing Canada. I felt ashamed that I've had 2 opportunities of a lifetime, and both times have failed. So for an 8-month period, I was so down, up and down, really. And then I realized that game doesn't define me. I'm hopefully going to have another opportunity 3 years from now in Beijing to go win a gold medal, and hopefully I'm able to accomplish that. But the process involved in preparing for a Paralympic Games is what truly counts. And I'm very proud of the last 7 to 8 years, the body of work that has gone into preparing to just be the best that I can be. And I've found that so far this season, after just making a mental adjustment of controlling how I prepare for each day at the start of every day. And what really changed for me actually was listening to a podcast, the Tim Ferriss Show. And I'll leave you with this because it was a very simple, profound piece of advice that really changed things for me. Is that he was speaking with George Raveling, who was assistant coach for the 1984 men's U.S. Olympic basketball team, and was also the director of international basketball at Nike. And he said every morning he wakes up, puts his 2 feet on the side of the bed, or gets out of the side of the bed, puts his 2 feet on the floor, and he says, "Today you have 2 choices, be happy or be really happy." Thank you.